my feeling of what it was like to be 12 or 13, and I think a lot of people's feeling of that. And I think that naturally feels like horror a lot of the time just because of everything feels so high stakes and so intense. And so I think it really started from that and trying to just put myself in the mindset of Ben at every moment.
Whenever I have people as accomplished as either of you, I actually love to go back to the beginning and ask, what do you sort of consider your first job in this industry? The first, did you start off as a PA on sets? The first thing you composed music for? First thing you shot? Anything?
When I was in middle school, actually, I was trying to be an actor for a little bit. I was hired to go to a cocktail party dressed up as Harry Potter and socialize with the guests.
With the accent and everything?
With the accent.
Oh, how
yeah.
fun.
There was like a Hagrid, there was a Hermione, and me.
Wow. No Ron?
No, there's a tight
Poor
budget,
Ron.
I think.
Always overlooked. And for you?
I guess my first way into the industry was making an experimental documentary for the National Film Board of Canada. My parents are commercial salmon fishermen, and I knew a lot about salmon and was studying marine ecology in college, and I met this wonderful filmmaker, Nettie Wild, and she was making an installation film, and I just tagged along.
That is so cool. Can you find that anywhere? Because I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, it's probably on the National Film Board website. It's called Uninterrupted.
Wow, that's so cool. Well, again, congratulations on a fantastic movie. And obviously, I want to start with Charlie, because what was sort of the initial spark or idea for the story that would become The Plague? Sad to say, I think there's a slightly autobiographical element to this film.
Yeah, I mean, I had made a short film called Sauna. Steven and I went to film school together. I made the film at AFI, and that was set at a water polo camp with a group of boys similar age. But it was pretty different, other than kind of the world and the tone. And I'd wanted to make that into a feature, but I couldn't really find the way forward until basically during COVID. I was sort of in my childhood bedroom. I had COVID, and I was cleaning out my room, and discovered these old journals I had kept over a summer when I was 12 at a sports camp. It wasn't water polo, but it was a kind of similar type of sort of YMCA type camp. And there was this idea of The Plague, we called it that, and I'd written all these would you rathers down and was trying to brainstorm new ones, and it just sort of clicked that I could combine kind of this short I had done and this experience. And then I started calling friends, and I was up at night chatting with them about their experiences when they were this age and camps they had gone to and similar things. And I was shocked at how many friends of mine had kind of similar types of experiences, but we'd never talked about it. And so that kind of launched it into the script phase.
I'm curious, had you thought about, the Plague from your childhood at all before finding those journals? Did it come back to you fast?
I had sort of blacked it out, and I think blacked out a lot of the, and I'll talk to people sometimes who see the movie who are God, things I'd really tried not to think about for 15 years came back very intensely. And so I hadn't thought about it a ton until then, and then it came back all at once. It kind of flooded in.
I mean, in addition to being a really powerful drama and very timely, this is a horror film. And why do you think this genre, especially body horror, is it such a good one to explore, all the traumas and fears and issues of adolescence and fitting in?
I think my main goal was really just to try to create a sort of audience experience that feels sort of my feeling of what it was like to be 12 or 13, and I think a lot of people's feeling of that. And I think that naturally feels like horror a lot of the time just because of everything feels so high stakes and so intense. And so I think it really started from that and trying to just put myself in the mindset of Ben at every moment, and if that would be really intense or that would be funnier or what that might look like. And so it kind of started there.
And Steven, I'm curious what drew you to this project, and because you do have a background in both, narrative and documentary, did that influence the visual style of The Plague at all?
Yeah, I mean, so the initial thing that drew me to the project was our longstanding relationship, and then the script. I mean, reading the script, it was very palpable on the page, and I just knew that there was a lot of things to explore, a lot of ideas that we could play with that weren't necessarily like expositional or in the dialogue. They were going to be able to be visualized on screen. But yeah, in terms of the visual style, I mean, we went in with a lot of intention and did a lot of work like distilling down what the language would be, and part of that is like this sort of more classical, composed, like kind of timeless kind of cinematic quality. And then when we showed up in Romania with the boys, and they really told us what the film was. And I think that's where some of the documentary aspect comes in. They're very like, kind of like similar to what Charlie was saying last night, actually, about improvisation. Like there was a lot of improvisation before we would roll the camera, and that would help everybody get into the space to create it. And so I think we said that we were often creating a sandbox for everybody to play in.
And I heard you shot on 35 millimeter film. Whose choice was that? I mean, it's probably a mutual decision.
It was
I
a
don't think you
mutual
tricked him.
decision,
Yeah.
and then we had to convince everybody else.
Well, why were you so adamant about that, and how did you convince people?
It just, it was right for the way we wanted the film to look. Again, a kind of like timeless quality. And yeah, I mean, convincing everyone was, we just had to like shoot tests and like show, the like, do the math of like how much it was going to cost, and, commit to like an amount of footage that we were going to be able to get every day, and be confident that we were going to be able to do that with the kids.
I mean, you mentioned this young cast and they're amazing. Well, actually, I want to start with Joel Edgerton because he's so good in this as like the well-meaning but ineffectual coach. What made you think of him for that role? And I understand he really loved the script. Like he thought about directing it or wanted to.
Yeah, he the script got sent to him, and I think he just really connected with it. I think these types of stories and themes are really meaningful to him. So he reached out and basically just said that he wanted to try to find a way to help me get it made. And it was very hard to get a movie like this made because it's not sort of full on traditional horror. It's not, it's not really hard to cast anyone famous. And so he sort of like was offered to attach himself as this supporting role, this sort of, like you said, ineffectual coach role. And to help be a producer on it, and that was really our pathway forward to find the financing.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is your feature film debut as a
Yes,
director?
yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. Not just because it's good, but it's very assured and confident, and like it seems like you know exactly what you want, but I guess you had a lot of time to think about it.
Definitely a lot of time, yeah. And I thought it was gonna. It shot 2 summers ago. We thought it was gonna shoot the summer before, and there's sort of the strikes and things paused, and the company that was going to help finance it kind of fell under, and we had to start over. And so it was sitting in my brain for a very long time.
And Joel stayed with it all this time, or he came on later?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. He definitely came on before the strike and was sort of there making phone calls, helping us find the money for a while.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you have this amazing young cast, and I'm really just curious. Well, first of all, I think you found real 12 to 13-year-old boys, which sounds simple, but I mean, I think it makes a big difference. Was that something you went in saying, we have to have this?
Yes, and I mean, there was immediately sort of, there's always questions, I think, with 12, 13-year-olds in a script of like, can they be 16 or can they be 18? And I felt like it had to be, and even, I mean, like we did a few sort of brief pickups like 6 months after the shoot. And even that, it was like, you could only use like kind of like close-ups of hands or, like everything was, because they look so different, even being like 14 and a half, or,
Right.
and now that they're at the festival, it's just like all their voices have dropped. It's like everything,
Yeah, like Ben's jaw structure had totally changed
You're
in that 6
kidding.
months.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so, but I felt like there was something. Yeah, and when we saw like thousands of tapes probably, and even some kids were 12 or some might be 15, but we would point to just like, no, they're just slightly too old or slightly too young, and on the too young side, you would feel a certain sort of like innocence still, where even some of the dialogue they don't quite understand, and then on the other side, it just felt like too old for someone to even sort of maybe kind of believe Jake about about
Yeah.
this thing, and so it was trying to hit that like bullseye of the age, and so I mean we saw tons and tons of people, and it was just about every batch after batch, and someone would sort of, oh, that person seems like they have the quality, and it would be almost like 2 seconds into the tape you could feel it. And Ko, who plays Jake, I found him on Instagram on New York Nico's page, and he just was going around New York, kind of trolling people and terrorizing people and knocking cereal boxes off the shelves in bodegas and running around but going to Mike Tyson shows and Jake Paul shows and making fun of them, and like he's
Really?
yeah. You should look it up. There's like a video. I think it's if you search like where's this kid's mother or something, you'll find it. But Ko Martin's Instagram, and so I found him that way, and it felt very just like really lucky timing with the universe that like a 13-year-old viral prankster was sort of like came into my Instagram feed when I was in the middle of casting this. So we brought him in, and he'd never really played like a large part in a movie before, and he was sort of not off book and sitting there holding the script in his hand, sort of just like slouching in the and we were just like, this is it. He
Jake.
has the quality. Yeah.
I am curious about that because, these young actors you cast, they spend a lot of time together, and there has to be, like, for lack of a better word, really good chemistry, even when they're being horrible to one another.
Yeah.
Were there chemistry reads where you got them together?
Yeah, I mean, they all lived across the country, so we weren't able to really get them, and we were able to do some callback chemistry reads and stuff, and then we tried to do like a Zoom thing. That was just awkward and hard. It's really hard, I think, to get chemistry on Zoom.
Yeah.
So it kind of came together, like everyone came a week out. We had to teach everyone how to play water polo and do all the fittings and, this water stunts and stuff, but that naturally became like a big bonding experience. And they were all living in the same hotel in Romania.
Yeah.
So I think they're having maybe too much fun.
I wondered.
But
Terrorizing everyone in that hotel.
Really. Did you end up in any of the pranks that Ko?
Ko will make fun of me and anyone, but
I'm still afraid of him.
yeah.
I'm afraid of him after this. I am curious because I think acting in front of a camera is such a strange thing in and of itself, and you're both spending a lot of time with them and trying to make sure they're comfortable in front of a camera. Did that come pretty naturally, or how did you sort of create that ease and that language?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of them had done it more than others. I think we tried to do a lot of like rehearsals in that week, and a lot of them I would maybe have even my phone out, or Steven was doing some camera tests and stuff, and just start to get, and even just be like, let's just sort of like go through our day of like, the water polo practice we're actually doing, and I'm going to film it like a documentary. And I think it helped them maybe get used to not to forgetting about the camera a little bit. And so, yeah, I mean, they were really, and there's a lot of shots that were even for, I think, an adult actor, like a wider lens, the camera's pretty close up to your face, it's pretty hard to ignore, and they were able to do a really good job of, I don't know, they picked it up really fast.
Steven, I was just thinking, in shooting this film, you probably had to actually get in the water as well.
Well, we actually had a really great German team who came to Romania for the week that we shot all the underwater material. But Charlie and I did spend a lot of time in the water during prep, like just with iPhones, kind of like figuring out what worked and what didn't. But yeah, when we actually shot, we had this wonderful team that came down, and they were great.
From your perspective as a DP, what was the most challenging part of this shoot? Logistically or emotionally?
The most challenging, I mean, in terms of the production, it was just very short days.
I wondered about
with
that,
with kids, you're only allowed so many hours. So that was really challenging, and but to be honest, like personally speaking, the toughest thing was my first daughter was born during the last week of prep, And so I flew home from Romania while Charlie was like getting the boys together for the first time and doing those rehearsals. And I just like touched home plate with my wife, and we spent 4 nights together, and then I flew back and we
Wow.
started shooting. So it was like a bit of a emotional roller coaster for that. But yeah, it all, we got to go to Cannes and bring my family, and we all celebrated both of those things.
I mean, actually, before I do that, I want to ask a couple of logistical questions. How many days did you shoot?
I think it was like, and it was 5 weeks, and then we had like a Saturday or two. I mean, Everett, who plays Ben, got sick in our one pool week, and we were like, we didn't have the footage of him in the pool, so we had to get that one Saturday, and then there was like another kind of pickup day. So I guess 27 days, but they're sort of like 6, 7 hour days,
Yeah.
so they feel so fast.
Yeah. Which, by the way, 6, 7 hour days sounds like heaven, but I know when you're trying to make a
No.
movie, it's not ideal.
Yeah.
You mentioned the film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, and it's been playing actually all over the world. And I'm curious, it strikes such a chord no matter where it is on so many levels. Why do you think that is? It's such a specific story, and yet it feels very universal in some ways.
Yeah, that's been probably the most exciting and kind of surprising thing for me, because I tried to be hyper specific, like these, some of the references to me, like only someone who's like exactly my age, who grew up in the, East Coast, might know a kid who was sort of saying some of those things, and it seems like, yeah, it is people from different countries, different generations, I think, can connect to. I mean, I guess just this sense of how far you're willing to kind of like sacrifice your own yourself, basically, to belong or to feel like you're part of a group. And I think that even beyond being a kid, I think that is something that everyone is sort of experiences all the time. And so, and I don't know, I guess seeing kids, in this way and captured this way, that maybe it just sort of like it jogs flashbacks or like war memories for some people. And so
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that the kids all seem to get along and were little terrors. But what was the atmosphere on set like? Like, how do you keep it light? Because they have to do some intense things, and then are they just able to like turn it off and go back to being kids?
yeah, and I think it was usually some of the more intense stuff was actually some of the more sort of like easy and chiller things on
Yeah.
set, because that had to be very like like planned, and it was, you only do a little piece at a time, and we would try to sort of like joke around a lot. Anytime it was like a really intense bullying scene, we would try to like huddle up after and be like, that was crazy, but like we're all like hanging out now, we're all
Yeah.
cool. But it was more like something really, really like seemingly simple, like everyone's just kind of like, like walking around and sort of like chattering by the pool, where it was like trying to create an energy of everyone joking and laughing, and then that could get go off the rails and become hard to kind of like bring that back in the box. But no, I think it wasn't too bad, because a lot of the time it's one or two or three people in the scene, and that always felt
Yeah.
really focused.
And you mentioned rehearsal improvising. Was any improvising on set, or you're on these
did.
tight hours, so I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the movie is mostly the script, like what you see. It's maybe like 90%. A few lines sort of like made it in, but we would do a ton of improv every single scene and film it and stuff. But it was usually kind of like we would do that, and then at some point I would cue someone to like enter into the scene, and then the actual dialogue would start, and then we'd keep rolling, and we'd sort of go straight into another one, and it kept it feeling a little less stilted, I think.
Did you all have conversations on set? Like, I've seen this twice, and the second time I saw it, since I knew what was going to happen. Although I always think something different might change. I don't know why. My friend and I had a very heated argument about whether or not the plague was real. And I'm curious, I'm sure as a filmmaker, you're not going to tell us, but you had to make a decision for yourself. Did cast and crew try to, ask your opinion about this, and would you tell them what you thought?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, we all have the information that Ben has, and can kind of make of that what we will. I mean, with each of the actors, I sort of said, I think it's important for you to think about what you believe about this, and sort of like write it down and think about that. And so I think they each had their own opinions, and it wasn't even like a one or yes or no. I think it was even scene by scene. They would sort of, it would always be like, just remember to sort of think about what do you think about this right now. but I tried to kind of like let them have that for themselves and not, and not necessarily, as their secret what their character might feel about it.
Did they ever have arguments about it? Like one person felt really strongly one way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
So team Real Plague
Yeah.
was louder than team It's All in Your Head.
Yes, I think so.
Stephen, for you, did you have opinions about this, or does it matter that you're in agreement?
No, I think it's, I think that for me, I always understood it as like anxieties and like internalized feelings that you can never really like capture. Like the moment you say it out loud, it is no longer relevant. And, so I think that that's what is often so effective, scene by scene. The continuity of the amount of the rash is changing. The sort of like perception of it is constantly you're chasing it, and Ben's you're chasing it with Ben. So I've always just accepted it as that. It's just anxiety.
You do such a good job of the camera, like really capturing the perspective of these. I haven't been a 12 or 13-year-old boy, but like it feels extremely dead on. I'm curious, did shooting on 35 millimeter help that? But also, how did you go about, I don't know if you had conversations with like the sound department and even the composer about like all working together to like make this cohesive world?
I mean, we were listening to some of the temp score while we were shooting, and I found that really inspiring. But I think that Charlie and I were just consistently like trying to make the most like brutally honest portrayal of what Ben was feeling in that moment. And so that was just like he and I kind of just like, going in with intention and watching the blocking and just like following through and adapting when we needed to. I don't know, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think we were trying to create this particular type of subjectivity that wasn't always necessarily like, there's something like Black Swan where like every single shot she's like looking at something and you see what she looks and it cuts back to her and it's through her eyes literally. But I think in this case we were trying to have it be like the entire world was mirroring his perception in a subjective way. So like even the hallway that is the hallway outside of his room might be a different hallway that we'd shoot in different times to create the feeling, like these sort of imperceptible differences of how he was feeling in a different moment, or where what his body might look like in a different moment could be inconsistent. And people will talk about this as an extremely poorly supervised camp, and I think in my mind, this is how it felt when you're 12, that it's not supervised, and that it's sort of trying to even think about Joel's character through the lens of what Ben would be experiencing it. And the music sort of is sort of what the voices in your head feel like is how we talked about it. So everything was trying to just build an entire universe that is sort of morphing around Ben's like emotional, psychological state scene by scene.
Now that you mention it, I'm trying to think if there were any other adults.
There are a few, but they're
like,
very, they're
scattered
kind of,
throughout.
you do
That's
catch
so
them
funny.
if you look. But
So I believe, is this correct? This film is opening on Christmas Day?
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. Oh, that's much better.
Yes.
No, that's brilliant counter programming. I love it.
And then it kind of goes out to a wider release in January.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope everyone's in their hometowns with their bullies.
Yeah, I was thinking this is actually because it's a stark time of year. People are like thinking a lot about I don't want to be too depressing, but I think that's actually great timing. You can only see Wicked so many times, so so please spread the word. It's such a special film. I want to thank you for being a great audience. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all for coming out.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.